Good morning. This is Anna Patterson with the North Carolina Housing Coalition. Thank you for joining us this morning for our housing call. And without further ado, I will turn it over to our Director of Housing Policy, Stephanie Watkins-Cruz.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you are having a great week so far. And I hope you're staying dry. If you are in the Triangle, and I believe on the coast, we are getting a lot of rain. Kicking it off to organizational updates, our 2024 conference presentations are now available. So if you attended the conference and registered and you were furiously taking notes and were wondering if the slides would be available, do not worry. They are now available to download and to view on our conference website. So we will have that linked in the call notes for you. We really hope that these resources help you continue to do your work in creating affordable housing solutions. And as always, don't hesitate to reach out to us if you need anything. If you haven't already, please make sure that you share your feedback via the survey that we have for the conference and help our conference planning partners continue to make this conference great. And go ahead and mark your calendars for next year's conference, which will happen on September 30th through October 1st. Another date we want you to mark down for next year is our Housing Day. We hope you'll join us on Wednesday, April 9th, 2025 at the North Carolina General Assembly for our Housing Advocacy Day. Plan to engage from around 8:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. or 3:30 p.m. and also tentatively reserve the late afternoon of April 8th, so the afternoon before, for an opportunity to connect with fellow advocates, allies, and practitioners across the state as we prepare together for a legislative day of action on April 9th. We will continue to release more information around times, meeting locations, and different preparation tips and tools for that day in the coming months. If you want to be on the list to be notified directly about our, and more immediately about our 2025 Housing Day at the General Assembly, we also have a form in the call notes for you. Moving on to federal updates. Yesterday, the Department of Housing and Urban Development published a final rule in the Federal Register to update the Housing and Urban Development Code for manufactured homes. Over 90 changes were made, which makes this the most extensive update to the manufactured home construction and safety standards in over 30 years. The changes are aimed at easing unnecessary red tape around the development of manufactured housing so that it can be built in an efficient and cost-effective manner. So really aiming to lower the housing costs and to improve building safe and affordable manufactured homes. The American Community Survey released their 2023 one-year annual estimates last week. The Census Bureau does this every fall. They release their one-year estimates in the fall and their five-year estimates every December. The one-year estimates is using data from the previous year, but the five-year estimates look at data from the past, of course, 5 years. The survey itself doesn't sample enough to people to provide reliable one-year data for smaller populations, leaving a lot of our smaller counties out. We wanted to mention that because this is exactly why we use five-year estimates in our county profiles. However, we did want to highlight a few things since the one-year survey data is useful at looking for larger populations. So here are a few things that stood out to us. The one-year estimates that were released last week indicated that 49.7% of American renters are cost burdened. So they spend more than 30% of the gross income on rent and utilities. Going to repeat that number, 49.7% of all American renters are cost burdened. However, in North Carolina, renter cost burden rose slightly from 48.5% in 2022 to 48.9% in 2023. Data at both levels continues to show that when you disaggregate the data, there are significant racial disparities, with a larger percent of non-white households experiencing cost burden compared to white households. Again, we use five-year estimates in our county profiles so that we can have more accurate data for our state in its entirety and not leave out the communities that have smaller populations. Moving on to state and local updates, the 2025 Supportive Housing Development Program, there's been a notice of publication on the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency website that we want to bring your attention to. So for our nonprofit housing and services providers, as well as nonprofit developers of supportive housing, local government entities, for-profit developers, and anyone involved in the integrated Olmstead compliant permanent rental housing and housing development consultant programs. The North Carolina Housing Finance Agency is announcing the availability of funding for their supportive housing development program in their 2025 funding cycle. We will have a link to the full program guidelines, the request form, and all additional application information on the agency's website. But wanted to just detail a little bit for those that don't know what kind of program this is and what properties fall under this program. So the Supportive Housing Development Program properties are properties that serve the following populations: people living with mental health, physical, or developmental disabilities, people experiencing homelessness or imminently at risk of homelessness, people with substance use disorders, children and youth in foster care or youth aging out of foster care, victims or survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, or human trafficking. There is a separate program exclusively for victims and survivors of human trafficking, and this is going to be announced at a later date this year. Adults re-entering the community after being released from correctional facilities. And just a highlight that for the 2025 cycle, there will be bonus points available for projects serving veterans who are homeless or imminently at risk of homeless, as well as bonus points will be given to available integrated Olmstead compliant permanent rental housing. So additional details on the program and what a complete application looks like will be in the call notes, as well as in the links that we will provide you in that document. Our State, Our Homes UNC Chapel Hill, Carolina Across 100 initiative is launching an 18-month program titled Our State, Our Homes, Partnering to Address Housing Needs in North Carolina. This 18-month program is going to be supporting a group of community collaboratives that are seeking to improve access to and availability of affordable housing in North Carolina. This program is seeking applications from communities that are interested in working across sectors to improve access to and availability of affordable housing options in their communities across the state. And so communities of all sizes and contexts are invited to apply. The teams are going to build collaboratives within their communities and benefit from peer learning from one another. And they will work together to better understand the context and the challenges of affordable housing and the related issues, as well as design and implement strategies to respond effectively. The program will be supported by staff from the School of Government's Development Finance Initiative and other university programs and organizations. Online applications are due by October 18th, 2024. We will have the link to the Our State, Our Homes program page, as well as a link to the application process. There is going to be a virtual application information session held on October 9th at 12 p.m. And you can direct all questions to Michael Welker, the Director of Policy and Research Partnerships at NC Impact, and we'll have his email in the call notes for you as well. Recently, the Durham Community Land Trust, DCLT, acquired a 48-unit naturally occurring affordable housing apartment complex to add to their portfolio. This complex is at the corner of Anderson Street and Chapel Hill Road, and it will continue to remain affordable to eligible renters in perpetuity. DCLT also just recently acquired over 2 acres nearby and plans to build townhomes for sale at prices affordable to families earning 80% of the area median income. Moving on to reports and resources, there's one in particular that I want to spend some time on. The North Carolina Housing Finance Agency explored some of the data from the Joint Center for Housing Studies State of the Nation's Housing Report for 2024 that was released earlier this year. And I just want to call out a particular data point that highlights how North Carolina has lost nearly 1/3 of its low-cost rental units over the last decade. So while the number of low-rent units has decreased in every single state, 47 of the 50, between 2012 and 2022, North Carolina as a state has experienced the 3rd largest decrease in the number of low-rent units and the 8th largest percentage decrease. I'll say that again. Out of all the states between 2012 and 2022, North Carolina has experienced the 3rd largest decrease in the number of low-rent units and the 8th largest percentage decrease in the percentage or ratio of low-rent units. Between 2012 and 2022, North Carolina lost 31% of units with rents under $600. So this is a loss of about 140,000 units. And it also lost 35% of units with rents between $600 and $799. So that's a loss of an additional 25,000 units when you adjust it for inflation. Meanwhile, the number of units with rents that are ranging between $1,400 and almost $2,000 or greater increased by 295%. So that is an increase in the number of units with rents between $1,400 and $2,000 or higher, which increased by almost 300%. That's 230,000 units of additional high rent units compared to the loss of really over almost 400,000 low rent units. So we'll have that report link for you in the call notes to check out. But it is a pretty staggering data point. Again, just highlighting how, as compared to the rest of the country, to have the third largest decrease in the number of low rent units, that's really astounding. And I think it speaks to how much work there is still to do. Moving on to events, the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine is having a webinar on housing policy and intergenerational poverty. They'll be talking about a recent report that's been released on the determinants of intergenerational poverty and how some of these cycles can be significantly reduced through housing policy. So this webinar will happen on September 19th from 4 to 5 p.m. There's another webinar that will be hosted by the Joint Center for Housing Studies of Harvard University on September 20th at 12:15. You do have to register. It's titled Helping Middle Income Renters and the Trade-Offs and Costs at Doing So. This Housing Center, or the Housing Solutions Lab, at NYU Furman, is hosting a webinar on October 2nd at 2 p.m. titled How Local Governments Can Meet Both Housing and Climate Goals. This has been a topic of increased interest lately. I've been really thankful to be able to talk to several environmental groups across the state that have been engaging a bit more actively in the affordable housing space and in the housing policy conversation. So definitely a webinar worth checking out. And for those who are interested, there is an affordable housing seminar that will review tools, strategies, and case studies for local government leadership at the School of Government here in Chapel Hill on October 4th from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. There is a course cost of $260, and registration closes on September 25th. It is in person, and it's designed for elected and appointed officials, and this includes managers and department heads and other practitioners from local governments who are setting strategic direction around affordable housing. And it will focus on local government support and public-private partnerships for affordable workforce residential housing. That's all we have for today. Again, remember that you fill out our conference survey to give us feedback to continue improving our annual fall conference, which next year will take place September 30th through October 1st. And we also want you to mark your calendars for April 9th of next year for our Housing Advocacy Day at the General Assembly. As always, if you have any questions or want us to focus on anything in particular, please don't hesitate to reach out. And I hope you have a great rest of your week. We'll talk to you next time.